everybody.
Morning.
Morning. Nice to be here bright and early. And thank you for all coming. If you want to be on a distribution list, come on up here and sign your name and email address, and then you'll just wind up getting whatever documents become public at meetings automatically. Thank you. But why don't we just start to build a record. Here is the official meeting notice. Let's pass those around. You would have gotten these electronically. But what we can do is after the meeting, if people want copies, we could collect these and introduce those. Okay, here is our agenda for the day.
Morning, Ray Bud. Good morning.
Good morning.
The morning, not the day, right? How long are we gonna be?
Well, I've always prided myself, Jeff, that if a meeting takes more than 50 minutes, it's no longer a meeting, it's a social gathering. So gents, I think the first order of business is to organize our committee. And it's, there's so many of us here that it would seem we need a chair.
Yep.
We need a secretary or clerk. I think it would be prudent to have a vice chair. And I think beyond that, we'll all wear multiple hats as far as being a liaison with, our architect and OPM, or a liaison with our stakeholders in public. So, does anyone want to entertain a motion?
Make a motion that we set up chair, vice chair, and clerk for the committee.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, a motion suggesting chair, vice chair, and secretary. We could probably pick a name out of a hat at this stage of the game, but
We could, and I guess I'd like to make a motion for you, Bob, to be the chair, if you're willing.
okay.
Second.
And I don't know if you would like to be the secretary, if you want to share duties, or
I just think it's good. I mean, we're all really co-chairs here. I mean,
Could you identify yourselves, please?
What's that?
Could you identify yourselves, please?
Okay. My name is Robert Connors, 39 Annapolis Way. I am one of the members that was appointed by the Board of Selectmen at their most recent meeting.
Eric Swan, 14 Old Farm Way. Been on many past committees. I'm an architect by day.
John Keller, 83 Scotland Road. I'm an OPM by day, and was on the selection committee for the OPM and the architectural design team.
And I'm Jeff Shaw. I'm principal of Context Architecture.
Mike Riley, fire chief.
You only want to meet Mike socially.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to ask everybody, there'll be plenty of public discussion, but as we're going through certain items on our agenda, there'll be plenty of time for you to chime in. But we have a lot of just procedural stuff we need to get through first business.
So I was making a motion to make you chair. I was going to offer secretary, clerk to you, if you want to do that, or?
Sure.
And Eric, would you consider being vice chair?
Yes. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. All right. What I've done is I printed off the Board of Selectmen chart just so that, again, at a first meeting, had to build a record of all the documents, it's pretty clear that the charge to the committee is we need to be innovative, we need to be efficient on our selection and design process. Time is of the essence, certainly costs are going up, interest rates are going up. And we have clarity as far as the locale, Morgan Avenue to the right of the fire station. We have clarity as to our budget, it's $6.5 million. And a lot of work has been done previously by a lot of good people, a lot of good volunteers, where that's programming needs and other tasks have been completed. Now we're into the technical stage where we convert that into workspace allocation and so on. So again, that's more just for part of the record. The next document is the staffing projections that were prepared by, Mike, I'm assuming they were prepared by you earlier in the year. I just thought it'd be good to distribute these and just review them to see if there's been any changes, okay? So I think the success of every project is having a clear line of communication between contractor, design team, OPM, the governing committee, and then certainly we all answer to the Board of Selectmen and ultimately to the taxpayers. So from Eric, what are your thoughts on that as far as, I mean, we've all experienced different protocols, but.
Well, looking to do, I'm trying to do something a little different, but trying to do something that, A, gets the documents out in a timely manner, 2, gives the update to the selectmen, and then 3rd, if there's needed to be an additional meeting or sort of presentation of the information live to people at an alternate time, might be the things that have been heard in the past.
Okay.
And I think as you said it, that the site has been selected, the budget has been selected, and the schedule is something that we should review. I mean, one of the first things I learned is scope, schedule, and cost, or program, schedule, and cost. And you need to get those 3 things or you don't have a project. So we have the program. We've been through this once in the past committee. We have the budget. We need to go back on a schedule, and we need to set a schedule, and we need to stick to it. And then within that schedule, people we can present then in terms of the phases that we normally go through, of conceptual to schematics to design development to construction documents, in the bid phase, and then on into construction. And so, and we all can move in a linear process forward.
I think it becomes helpful to not to add confusion to the actual build team or the architect and OPM, is that all communication should flow through this committee.
Yes.
As far as from one point up to, again, the Board of Selectmen and then, to the general public. I think Eric would be helpful to have a member of this committee be a liaison, where that not everything is going to get done at this meeting, at a meeting level. There'll be a communication on something between one member and the architect, scheduling or what have you. The biggest thing is we can't do any deliberation outside the meeting area with a small committee. If information is sent out in a packet, it's to be discussed at the meeting and not bantering back and forth, just to make sure we're in strict compliance. But I mean, that's what it would seem to me. I mean, Jeff, your feelings on that?
I'd prefer to usually have one or a defined point of contact.
Right.
And then from that point, it gets spread out to whoever it needs to, so that works fine.
Okay.
So I guess what we're saying is that the only communication with Jeff on this project is through one of us that we delegate as that communicator.
Yeah, I mean, at the meeting, it's a different story, but
Right.
between meeting to meeting, it's good to have a liaison that can have a conversation, or if you have a question, putting it forward. Okay? So Eric or John, who would prefer to be the liaison with the design team?
This person, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we're
Okay, yep.
somewhat close.
Well, I know us that make the trek to Boston and Cambridge every day. Now, the other thing is, I think it's important to have a committee member be a liaison with the public, so that we're collecting emails from stakeholders that have taken the time to participate. And it would seem to me, as documentation becomes public, once it's introduced, that it be shared at a meeting by meeting basis with certainly whoever wants it, to expedite the flow of information, rather than add another step or two to it. But so I think we all could share that responsibility, being a liaison with the public. A lot of good ideas percolate up from time to time, and I think that would be helpful. All right, so Jeff, obviously we've got a little change of direction from where we've been, but I think we now have clarity to where we're heading. You had prepared this draft estimate of probable cost back in May.
Right.
And I think it would be helpful and certainly necessary to update this based on what we're dealing with here. You already done it?
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
Eric mentioned to me last week this might be helpful, so
Okay.
if you'd like, we can talk about this.
Well, that's great. I just wanted to have a format. I thought it was very helpful. So why don't we get into that if we can?
Sure. So one of the things that we will also need to revisit as well is the program, and I think that's on your agenda as well. But for now, I started with 10,300 square feet is just a number that's approximately close to 10,000 square feet. It was similar to what was seen before, but we'll have to talk about that from a programming standpoint as well. But from a budget standpoint, starting from that, applying the $450 per square foot cost and escalating it to bidding in the fall of 2019, which we can also talk about the schedule.
Right.
At 4%, to get there, we get to a total cost of roughly 4.9, which also includes the potential of the communications tower, which we know has been discussed, and there's other potential solutions there. But for now, there's an allowance for that. I have not adjusted any of the A&E fees yet, but I think there may have to be an adjustment depending on how things go forward, given the fact that we've already expended the schematic design funds, and we're going to do schematic design again. But that wouldn't be a huge amount of money. There's also costs in here for the teledata and security consultant, which the town would hire. We don't necessarily know that that's going to happen. And a communications tower design consultant, which again, that could also change. Project manager, which I know Kevin couldn't be here today, but they will have a budget that will have to come into this as well. And I think we'll have to have a discussion as to how much oversight on site is warranted for the project. But that will impact that budget item. There'll be geotechnical costs, which we may, now that we know, and I did bring a survey with a potential footprint on it, and so we can kind of discuss maybe where the building goes, but the possibility exists we can get the geotechnical engineering piece rolling very quickly, which will be helpful to speeding the process along. MEP commissioning, which in the last iteration we all decided that was gonna be a useful piece of the puzzle. Construction testing, which is pretty basic piece of construction. And then the most variable component, I think, is the furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, because it has a lot to do with what do we want this station to be, what do we want it to house, what are we bringing in versus what are we buying new. And so I have tried to define a little bit better how those numbers were achieved. So I put some cost per square foot onto them to give you a perspective of how the number was achieved. So for furnishings, it was about $15 per square foot. And for the security CCTV system, I used a per square foot number of $14. However, the reality is that's not how you budget a system like that. It's usually number of doors, number of cameras, and then the head end. I did work with an engineer to come up with an idea of how much that might be, our engineer. And I think the $140,000, $150,000 range is a reasonable starting point, but once we actually have a design, we can actually determine exactly where these cameras and card readers are going to go. I think we'll have a better understanding, we might be able to beat that number. And other expenses, the survey I believe is complete. I did not include the cost because I don't know what the cost is in this budget, and that's a question as to whether the project should encumber that in its budget. I'll have to get further information on that. And the other big piece of this is the utility fees and back charges, which we don't yet know what those are. But I do believe that fairly quickly we can ask the utility companies for demand service letters and seeing if they could advise. Now, I've never had a lot of luck getting them to tell you up front what their back charges would be, but we might have a better idea. And then finally, there's a 10% contingency on both the soft cost and the construction cost. So with 10,300 square foot and understanding everything I just mentioned, it gets to a total of 7.2 roughly million, which is, we got a little work to do to get that back into 6.5.
I think it's great too. I'd rather be conservative in all these, which I thank you for. It gives us a eyes wide open prospect of costs. So I mean, the reality is, team, we've got 6.5 million as a budget. It would seem to me that, Mike, if you can just double check your staffing levels and projections, just as I think it then goes on to how do we optimize efficiently the program needs into workspace allocations. And Mike spent some time and came up with a drawing to basically assign a block on a level that fits your typical working needs, right, Mike? So, any comments for Jeff? All right. So, Jeff, as I see this, we have a budget for a 9,000 square foot building. The 50 by 100 first floor footprint, in my mind is the back 20 feet or back 1,000 feet is your Sally Port garage. The second floor would be 50 by 80. So the Sally Port garage on the back would simply be a one-story flat roof. As we go through this workspace allocation, if we creep into over the 9,000 range, we've got that additional 1,000 feet without changing footprint or anything like that. So that was kind of the thought process on that.
I saw your drawings and your drawings too as well, and I actually prepared a program comparison between the 2018 now, but the prior design, the final program, the prior design, and the drawings that you guys produced. I think it was Mike's drawings actually that I used to pass that around, and that will give you And then the blue boxes on the right-hand side are something that I'm just throwing out there for discussion, whether we want that now or discuss it in the future. But you can see at the bottom that the prior final program, this document here that was finished in the last round, had about 11,600 square feet. That's at the bottom, sort of the middle of the page. The grossing factor was 35%. Then the prior design in a single-story configuration, this was the police part of the combined building concept, was approximately 9,300 square feet. It was more efficient, 28% grossing, but that had to do also because it's part of a combined building. The sketch plans that, Mike, I think these are based on your drawings, was even more efficient at 26%, 9,000 square feet. And then currently, what I'm proposing, we bump that up a little bit, just because there's a few areas where I felt like we might be a little tight on space. But we would still continue to need to be very efficient with our layout. I also proposed which floors they might go on, and I ended up with a building that was equal first to second floor, about 4,600 square feet per floor. To get you about a little over, so it's 9,300 square feet currently, which saves us 1,000 square feet in the budget. So that's 60% of the way to the deficit that we have right now, which I think is going to be needed in order to achieve the 6.5 million. So I know it's kind of a lot to throw at you this morning. You can take a look at it and we can talk about it next time if you want. But just real briefly, most of this follows your concept layout in terms of where rooms are located, second floor versus first floor. So for instance, the training room is up on the second floor. We'd obviously have an elevator here anyways, but that's where it is currently. And obviously all of the patrol detention facilities would all be on the first floor. So it's pretty reasonable, I think, compared to what we've talked about before in the past. A couple of the areas that we probably want to do a little bit more due diligence on might be the locker room areas, because those have shrunken.
I have no idea what.
And nobody's laid it out, exactly, nobody lays out. I mean, Bob, you actually did lay it out a little bit, you had bathrooms shown at least. I don't even have bathrooms shown, so.
I just tried to stack everything up.
Which makes perfect sense.
Thinking as a contractor to.
Well, it makes perfect sense. It would be far cheaper, easier if everything.
If we can make that work.
All the wet stuff happened in one area. So I think that's a goal that we should keep. But I haven't done an actual layout to go with this. I just did the numbers, so we can take a look at that.
Well, it would seem, Eric, that getting to the layout of what you've discussed here, Jeff, would be one of the next steps for us. What do you think would be a time frame to, obviously being realistic, we're in the holiday season, what would be a time frame for you to be able to get a first draft out on a layout?
I think we could have a sketch to look at early January. I don't see a problem with that. To some extent, we've got a big leg up because we did so much work in the prior round. We did essentially four different designs for a police station. So a lot of that is somewhat valid, and Mike's put some more thought into it. So I think we've got a good head start. I think early January will be fine. I apologize, I did have a draft schedule prepared for you, at least an overview, but it somehow didn't get printed with everything else I have. So I can read to you what that schedule would look like. But
Let me just to circulate a date while we're all here. So Fridays at 7 a.m. seem to be our optimum time for all of us that have to work in Boston. Trying to get back by 7 o'clock can be a challenge most nights. So the first Friday would be the 4th, the second would be the 11th, the third would be the 18th.
And out of those three, I cannot do the 18th.
Okay, so the 11th, they give you enough time to?
11th would be fine.
Okay. So our next meeting will be January 11th, 2019. Take a while to get used to that. Okay. Any questions for Jeff on that? You're gonna get into your schedule, but before you do, any questions for Jeff?
Just in terms of the plan, you said sketch, I mean, are we talking drafted sketch, are we talking hand sketch?
Hand sketch.
So hand sketch, and the driver for working this building front to back and first floor to second floor, in terms of the critical spaces, the detention, there's a driver, the front end is a driver.
Yep.
And Sally Port and Garage, obviously a driver for their location, everything else tries to get fit in.
Yep, exactly.
And we have furniture in the plan, or at least?
Well, the first
chairs?
sketch probably won't have furniture in it yet, but if we can get the rooms in the right spots and the chief's comfortable with that, I think we can, at the next sketch, probably will be, or not sketch, but the next drawing will probably be an actual hard line
Because we need to get the
plan with furniture.
people, and if people are planned in spaces, even if we don't have a hard office for them, there's still people, and so in terms of the chief getting from his operational chart to a plan that has that number of people accommodated in it, you know, and that's something in the last plan where we still hadn't quite gotten to yet, so we'd like to move that forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeff, you said you had a,
Yeah, if you,
Schedule.
and again, I apologize, I'm gonna.
if you could email that to
I'll
us.
email
that'd be
it
great.
out. I'll email all of this stuff out. The schedule that and this is basics, not as detailed as the last schedule we did, just to kind of get a feedback from you guys, but schematic design, January, month of January and February, eight weeks for that, with the cost estimate being available to be reviewed in March. Then, after schematic design, we start in design development in March. While the cost estimate for SD was underway, we have 12 weeks of design development, so March, April, and May. With that cost estimate being complete in June. In the middle of design development, we're targeting currently, and I have not talked to my civil engineer, so take this with a little bit of uncertainty, but targeting April to submit to boards for approvals, and then targeting May, the next month, to have hearings. And I know that you had sent out, Bob, a request for some information about those boards and committees, and I think it'll be helpful to get their feedback and plug this back into the schedule and see how that shakes out. But the idea here is that we would be able to get at least a hearing, first hearing, to gain approval prior to starting construction drawings. But construction drawings, bid documents would take about approximately 10 weeks, would be from June through mid-August, and then we'd do bidding from mid-August to the end of September. So if all things went smoothly and turnaround on contracts went smoothly, we'd be building between October 2019 and September of 2020 with basically an October 1st occupancy 2020. You know, if things go even better, we could probably improve on that schedule, but that's essentially the schedule that I laid out so far.
That's great, that's helpful for us to plug it in. One of our next items is talking about the sequencing of our own approvals and what each committee or board is going to require. Any questions for Jeff?
Cost estimates in terms of,
Well, you did your probable here, but
right,
So we will have 3, schematic design, design development, and I didn't mention it when I was reading the schedule off, but we'll do a CD cost estimate midway through CDs, which we think we'll be able to review that in early August, end of July timeframe, which essentially gives us the confidence we need to go out and bid the project, so we're still on budget.
and when would the consultants team of engineers be engaged?
I think we're gonna try to engage them as quickly as we can in schematic design, so having a sketch plan, an initial plan that everybody's comfortable with and can sign off with, and I can get the engineers started on laying it out from an MEP and structural standpoint. It's key, and then putting the building in a particular spot on the site as quickly as possible will help us get to the regulatory stage, because this is I'm assuming there's about 2 months worth of engineering that has to happen for them to prepare the kind of documents they need to go to the planning board essentially with stormwater considerations, that sort of thing. So once we can plug the building in, the parking in, and we're all comfortable with that, then I can get the civil engineer fully engaged on their work.
Do we have in the budget, do you do normal course of practice for these projects? But on some are bigger projects, we have the engineers write a narrative up front to get their ideas out in as simple as possible, as quickly as possible for a review, so that we're not having them draw on the boards and go down a path.
That's exactly what would happen. So the first step would be for them to prepare a narrative that we can review. I mean, it'll be basics, but be the systems that they are recommending for the building. When it comes to the HVAC side, they will also have to do, and normally would like to do, a systems comparison chart, which will show you a baseline HVAC system plus a minimum of 3 alternative approaches, and it will show first cost as well as total life cycle costs from the energy standpoint of the project, so you can make an informed decision about what you'd like to spend on it. So that'll happen as quickly as we can in schematic design to get to that point. And the life cycle cost may end up being February.
I'd be interested in chatting with the hardware consultant we're gonna use.
For door hardware?
Yeah. Well, Newbury already has a master key system.
Oh, okay, yeah,
with-
sure. Zip best
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
like that.
Right, and the reason for the narrative is to get it on a piece of paper,
Yeah,
get it circulated.
exactly.
Before they spend a lot of hard time producing drawings that only have to take more time to be edited. And if that, I think that needs to be done as part of the package that is included is the SD cost estimate. So you're just not estimating a plan and defaulting to the line items, and you have something to base it on.
Correct, and I think getting into more on the architectural side of things, materials, choices, options, we'd like to be able to price those as well in the first estimate. So I think, at some point during the schematic design process, I'd like to have a discussion about what our preferences for materials. I mean, I will tell you what my thoughts are, and then I get your feedback. I don't think at schematic design we should rule anything out unless we know clearly it's not going to be affordable for the town or it's not desirable. But we might be able to, I think we should, price into our estimate in that first schematic alternate material types, so that we can say, the roof as asphalt shingles is this, maybe we won't look at metal, but metal's X, more. Same thing for the facade of the building, different grades of materials, so that we can, again, with that information, inform our design development phase, because we'll have a much better check on the budget than.
So at some point, it's gonna be helpful for you to have an inventory of existing furniture and equipment that we're gonna be transferring, like from your current operation, so that then Jeff can plug it into your space application.
Yeah, obviously well, maybe it's not obvious, but in our study that we had done, the assumption was everything was new. So now that we are potentially gonna look at moving over whatever you'd like to move over.
Communications, the radios are on.
Yeah.
That thing.
Yeah, anything that's gonna be existing and just moved in, we'd like to know what those.
I think it's important to inventory all of your existing furniture, Mike, because that's something that we might have to get phased in depending on the budget of the building. I mean, it's easier to address furniture needs,
Oh, absolutely.
in the next fiscal year or whatever,
And
but.
if you took this list and we modified the Excel spreadsheet to, so you just had your room square footage, and then after that, you've then provided an inventory per room. And if you then could even just put the number of people in that space, we could then move that along. And if you don't have that room and it's new, it's new. If you have it and you can list used furniture, that'd be excellent.
A lot of the furniture in the offices that are occupied, like the sergeant's office, the detective, my office, deputies, is fairly new. I mean, it's been in the last 3 or 4 years, and I have zero issue moving that stuff over. You know, those are types of things, and I think Bob's right. You know, let's get the building up, and then we'll worry about furnishing it at some point. I mean, I don't want to, some stuff that's falling apart, you know, obviously we want to replace, but for the most part, I think we can retask a lot of the furniture in it.
But the locker room and
Yeah, no, that's gonna
evidence
burn.
storage
You know, that's,
has some particular requirements, so that we'd like to get, and as you're doing that, I mean, you know evidence storage, but you also have your evidence storage, that needs to be communicated so that we're at the same level.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, my experience in working on projects like this and talking to the rank and file, they live in the cruiser and they live in their locker. And getting the appropriate locker that houses all of the gear for all weather conditions is critical. And so foregoing something else so we get that right locker package, I think is a critical step. The other thing, Jeff, in my mind, we're looking at that footprint, but we're going to go with an extended roof pitch, just so that we can stack up one of the stairways to go up to that third attic storage area, but have enough height up there. And I had put down a 10-12 pitch, but that probably would get excessive. But certainly we want to be able to pick up some overflow storage up there for dead records or Christmas decorations or whatever else we.
Trying all our dead records, we're trying to get them stored electronically, but it's still.
It's just manpower.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
All right, so I think to work on parallel path is reaching out to the different committees and boards within the town. So here was a sample letter I would like to send off to the appropriate boards. To one, see if they'll generate a quick narrative memo of, no, we don't need you, you need no approval, or step 1, 2, 3 in a timeline, so that we can address it all at one time. And then certainly the sequencing. We're probably going to wind up going to conservation first with stormwater management issues. And stormwater management's handled at the Conservation Commission level, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it seemed that would be the first step, and then going off to site plan review once you know the location is okay.
So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna do the ZBA review on the
Okay.
board.
Yeah.
If it came to the board, it would come to me anyway.
What I would suggest to Eric, is the Ethics Commission, typically, I mean, I've served in multiple roles. I was on the Finance Committee and Chairman of the Capital Planning Committee, and you're making.
I would do the legwork to write the report that walks through the zoning bylaws. I would give it to.
You'll find that if you just send them a request telling them what you're wearing 2 hats,
Yep.
they're most likely, what they've done in the past is, you're fine to go forward. But
My report would have to go back to the chairman
Right.
of the ZBA and be reviewed and be issued by
Okay.
the chair.
And again, any other applicable regulation or
Mhm.
local permitting, I'm not sure on curb cut water sewer tie-in where it's a Newburyport Water and Sewer Commission, but I've just put this whole laundry list together so that we can start to look at that. I mean, I think the first approach is to try to address it within the different boards. The final approach would be, if it was necessary, just have town council issue a legal opinion spelling out exactly, if we have confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So with your authorization, I'd like to convert this from a sample to an actual letter and send these off to the appropriate people.
I'll make a motion that we, that you redraft the letter and formally issue it.
I second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Great.
Do you, Jeff, find anything else on this list dealing with other municipalities that?
Nothing that I can see local, but there will be a Department of Public Health review required for the detention area. There's actually two reviews. One is a plan review, and the other one is an actual inspection and acceptance of the facility once it's built. So we will usually take care of that. You guys don't
Right.
even see that. We send the documents off and have them review it. We've done so many of these that we kind of know what they want to see anyways.
That's a state agency?
State Department. In fact, I think it's a one-man agency, I think, in fact.
It is.
That's so unlike government today.
Jeff, are there new regulations coming down as far as evidence, polling areas and things
So I just had a conversation with chief in another department who is made me aware that the possibility exists because of the recent change to how the state is going to handle sexual assault,
like that? Yes.
that the possibility exists that local law enforcement may have to store the kits refrigerated indefinitely. So what we discussed in our meeting was what's the potential that at some point some other group has to come alongside to assist, because if you imagine how much storage this has to be. So as background, currently all departments usually send all of their sexual assault kits, whether they're reported, I forget the terminology, it's reported or not reported.
Whether the victim wants to go forward, or
Exactly.
doesn't want to go forward, whether a suspect is found, or still
It
alive.
all goes off to the state. The
Yes.
state does the analysis and sends the results essentially back to the department, but the state keeps everything in a secure location. But there's been issues with that, as has been reported. And now it appears that the state is only going to accept the, store, I should say, the kits that have been reported, right? And so anything that's unreported, anything that's sort of otherwise will be sent back to the department for storage. They have to be refrigerated. And so currently what we don't have in most municipalities is an evidence room with enough refrigeration capacity to handle an unlimited number of sexual assault kits. Which means that if a department had a lot of these, you're talking about essentially a restaurant walk-in refrigerator. And I think that my assumption is that a cottage industry is going to develop around it. If the state doesn't have a funding mechanism, somebody else is going to see a business opportunity.
Just like the cottage industry with the firehouse.
Exactly,
storage.
and I say, we'll take your kits, we'll store them off-site in our refrigerated area in a secure space, and it's legal, and you don't have to have space for any department, and that just becomes a line item on your budget now. But, so that's sort of where we discuss it and thinking through the evidence in that other department, and I'm thinking it might be the same thing here, is that we should not necessarily plan for the need to expand our evidence room greatly because we now need a whole refrigerated section that we don't currently have. But there will still be some refrigeration in there because there's still things that will need to be handled in a temporary way.
If there's nothing else.
There's
that
been
you'd like-
legislation to correct that. Final,
Okay.
but they'll take up next year.
Anything further? We'll open this up to public comments, questions.
I guess the only other thing I was thinking about is in terms of emergency management in Seabrook, and is that something that needs to be reviewed?
As far as for the site plan?
Yeah, or space provided, or?
They have Seabrook has a siren pole outside where the fire department is. I don't think, because the construction's going on down the other end, we have the ability to activate that siren pole from within, so there'll have to be some wiring, but the Seabrook would have to take care of those costs, but I don't see anything else that would, that's right off the bat, but I'll have the conversation.
So we should just add them as a line item across the T and dot the I. Is there a generator provided by them, or?
There is. We'll discuss that as well. I know Salisbury is in the EPC. I don't know what they did as far as the backup generator one. Seabrook provides us the generator out back at the police station. Seabrook, it's maintained by them, it was put in by them, but because that's the EOC.
Salisbury did the road, the item.
I'll have a discussion with Seabrook about the generator that can power the building, because that's our EOC as well.
It's a large generator.
Yes.
Very large.
All set then for me?
John, anything?
No.
Chief?
No.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if you want to look at this. I did prepare this as an excuse. There's only one copy.
We want to look at everything, Jeff.
But Eric did come and talk to me a little bit about the project, and so I took the survey and dropped the 50 by 100 foot footprint of the building on top of it, and sort of, as Eric and I discussed, if it's a rectangular building like this, there's probably 3 locations that it could go on site, all the way over to the neighbor on the right, the middle of the site, or on the left-hand side of the site. And given
You previously had it rotated.
and previously we had it sort of in the center, and it was rotated, and I think in terms of trying to lay out the site efficiently, cost effectively, with parking, garage needs of the building, I think keeping the building perpendicular to Morgan Avenue is probably the most efficient way to lay it out, and probably pushing it to the fire station side of the site as much as possible is also preferable from both a neighborhood perspective, but also from an efficiency.
And I mentioned that in all previous committees, the building had always been somehow holding the line of the town hall, the front of the fire station, down Morgan
Sure,
Ave, it's just simple
Sure.
planning.
Yeah.
How do you go about getting borings, and what's the most efficient way to do that? in
So-
the process?
Well, what do we get for setback? What site restrictions?
So
do we
unfortunately, it
have?
didn't print very well. I've cited this thing 30 feet back from the curb and 100 feet from the neighbor's property line.
20, 10, 10.
Yeah,
So we're fine from any type of setback relief.
yeah.
It would certainly just be where the boundaries of wetland and what,
Yeah, and so right now, the 100-foot buffer comes in approximately right there, and the 50-foot is back there. So we're outside the 50-foot.
Okay.
But we always assumed we'd have some sort of interaction with the 100-foot.
on the, what's your experience with the 50-foot buffer? Are we gonna be able to get access and egress to a Sally Port garage through that? It's usually the last 25 feet that becomes
Yes.
problematic.
I think that's been the expectation here, is that we'd be in, potentially into the 50, but nothing beyond 25.
Okay.
And so, as far as borings go, the faster we can do this, the better, but we typically would ask for 1 day worth of a driller's time to come out on site, and then they ask them to drill as many holes as they can, and we just drop points on this plan in order of priority. So typically it's the 4 corners of the building, maybe a center point, and if we have more time, I might drop a few points out in the parking lot for things like the infiltration system, any other structures that might have to go underground, just to kind of get an understanding where groundwater is, as well as any underground issues. We also do not have currently a phase 1 yet, do we?
There is
I thought
a-
the town was in process of getting that.
I think they had obtained a phase 1,
Right.
but that was more title review.
Right, okay.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
So in terms of this position and this rectangle, what had previously been discussed is that you have a front face of the building, you have public access from the front, you have some business access from the side, and you have private secure access from the back. It lays out in the line of the buildings as discussed, it separates itself from the residential, and we just try to avoid, but get the most space in terms of pushing back into the wetland zone, which is parking, or if you needed a future shed or something like that, we just consider how much we're manipulating vegetation or whatever else is going.
Where would the generator go?
Well, that's a good question, because your pole and your point of sewer and utilities probably stops right here at the line. And so from this point, we need to figure out where the most efficient way and where the spaces inside the building are, so that we're minimizing distance from the utility that we're paying
Right,
for after
we have
that
a,
point.
depending on how we have to set the transformer, it might be pole mounted, which would be ideal. If it isn't, then we have got to go from the transformer to the building electric room and back out to the generator and coming back. So it's, there's a bunch of different steps So making it close, making the electric room close to where the generator, the transformer is, and that's all close to where the utility comes on site, just helps with cost.
So if everything stops at the street, at the fire station, police station line, then maybe running stuff back and having something along this side. You have a convenient neighbor, they have items that they'd like to deal with too.
See, actually, it's both of these generators.
There's a pad here, and there's an actual generator there now.
So, yeah, there's two generators, so if we get Seabrook to do one large generator between them that powers both buildings, that's the next thing. Just saying.
It's just a request.
See, they can't say yes if you don't ask.
Generator always starts out.
So the only thing that I noticed, Jeff, was that it looks like three-phase wiring stops at High Road. So we're gonna have to look at with our utilities, getting that extended couple of poles down.
Yeah, well, the elevator's probably gonna be a hydraulic, that's my assumption.
But we're probably gonna go three-phase and step down anyway, or?
Well, three-phase is probably, would be great if we had it. I don't know that we're gonna need it, that's why I say, the only thing that might have tripped us into that might be the elevator, although with the eco machine roomless elevators, it's not quite as bad, but, so we can always ask the engineers what they would prefer, but the cost of bringing it down the street may be more than we wanna pay. I mean, it's always nice to have that capability in the future if you ever need something.
Okay. Why don't we open this up to the public comment? If you come up, give your name, your address. It just makes it easy when people are watching this later.
Sure.
And they get used to, everyone knows Fred and Jim, so we.
Craig Lowe, Orchard Street. I worked for Mass Electric for 40 years in the
Right.
engineering department. Later on in my career, I built high voltage substations. A building this size, you don't need three-phase.
Right.
Single phase is more than sufficient. Byfield Fire Department, because we're private, we built that whole station for under $1 million. Site work, everything, communications, furniture, standby generator. Unfortunately, that gives you the difference between a private building and a building that has to be done through, prevailing wages and everything, or whatever, but. So single phase is more than sufficient. For aesthetics wise, it may be prudent to put a single phase pad mount near the new building rather than a single phase on the pole, because on the pole you're going to have to put in secondary from siphon from the pole into the building. And I would think it'd be prudent to put a single phase pad mount, probably a 25 kVA on site. But correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've already spent 12 to 15% of the $6.5 million on design, which to me is alarming. How much more design work and what is the cost going to be to finish the design?
So my understanding is that the budget that I was mentioning earlier already includes everything that had been spent and will be spent, except for the redo essentially of the schematic design, which is about 2 months worth of work. So all of those numbers are sort of factored in already in various line items, and I think what's already been spent by the town includes a number of different things, including the owner's project manager's fees as well. He's not here today, but Kevin and his company, separate entity, are also managing the project.
All of the fees are controlled by contract that has been executed between the architect
Well, I
and the town.
understand that, but it seems like we've spent an awful lot of money thus far.
Understood.
That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Excuse me, come on, check out the coffee. My name is Joe McDonough. I live at 43 Main Street. I have a suggestion and a question. My suggestion is that since you can do public meetings telephonically, that you do reschedule for for an evening meeting, and if you're running late coming out of Boston, you get on the phone and you start the meeting. I think it would make it easier for folks to attend, and I think it would probably help the climate of trustworthiness as well. My question is, if the town receives extra funding, either from Governor's Academy or from any grant that might happen in the future that is, I guess, at this point aspirational, will that money go towards reducing the cost to taxpayers, or will it be seen as extra funds that can be used to give more and better things for the building? And do you see your role as providing options to the selectmen that they might be able to find ways to exceed the budget if they receive funding from other sources? Or maybe these are questions beyond your pay
Well,
grade.
let me take a shot at that. One of the things that we were discussing earlier is in the designs, having alternate selections, whether it be the type of roof, type of facade, even the type of HVAC system. And as far as how that budget would ever be exceeded or how that money would be allocated, that would be a question for the Board of Selectmen and for the town administrator. Our charge is very specific. We've got 6.5, going to build a standalone police station and report back. If we were to hit a snag on geotechnical or anything along that with soil conditions, that could have an impact. That would be turned around quickly. That's the unknown factor. Everything else we've got. We have a history of the last 6 months of what costs have been that you're using pretty much for your budget.
That any past committee has not had any discussion or been involved in any discussion with governors or any other potential sources. It's town administration, board of selectmen, whatever they've been doing, have been working that out. And I would gladly get on the phone, but I don't drive to work. I take the bus, and they don't let you talk on the phone. So everybody talked on the phone. No one would take the bus. I don't think everybody else on the bus wants to hear the conversation. But point taken.
Sure, I think the reality is on the time. The conflict with meeting room availability and everyone else as far as commuting, we have had much better luck having a first thing meeting in the morning where that Jeff could be at 3 meetings a week, and now instead of having a meeting scheduled for January 11th, trying to do this on a nighttime, that could be the end of January, 1st of February, to find one, a night that we have available space, and then 2, aligning the half a dozen schedules in order to conduct the meeting. That's the driving force.
Democracy is a pesky thing.
Yeah, no, it's
Open is.
all my retired friends get to sleep in. I'm just waiting for the day.
Okay, I mean, it's just that you're building a building, but you're operating, in a public forum doing it.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, those are the rules we work by.
I think you bring up a good point. I mean, how we see our committee functioning, and please jump in, gentlemen, is we're going to sort through details, and then once a month make a recommendation or an update to the board. So that particular update will compile all of the data that we've worked on, and that will be at a regular scheduled Board of Selectmen's meeting. And certainly these are all televised, and you can easily go to the town website or the YouTube channel will be able to do that.
Okay. Well, I just want to see in your task that it didn't include creating a wish list if you received another sum of money from.
Alternate
from one of
finishes,
those other sources.
surface finishes, exterior facade, items like that, whether there's gonna be a portico in the front of the building. We're going to build an innovative, efficient building, but we also wanna have it that it's gonna be something we're all proud of when we're done, at the right quality and certainly fitting with the aesthetics of Newbury and our upper Green region.
I think we need to get to the level of where we have a line item where you can actually say that flagpole costs $1,500. Is that $1,500 necessary? Is that $1,500 better served over here? Is it right in line and it's a good cost and we should just do it? And until we have the line items, you can't make equal decisions. Right now, it's all just lumped into one cost.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Gents, anyone else? Jim?
Jim Moran, Elm Street. I have several items I want to talk about briefly. Site plan, filling the site, generator set, possible basement in the building, geotechnical work, relocation of the sewage pump station that's in place right now, and underground utilities on Morgan Avenue. Starting at the top, Jeff is already well advanced on the site plan. I would imagine that's a very important and driving figure in this whole project. Second thing is site fill. I've looked at it, I see it'd be a huge advantage to add 2 to 3 feet of fill to bring the grade up roughly to where your fire station is. I figured at 160 square foot plot, foot deep, it's about 1,000 yards, so it could take 2,000 or 3,000 yards. But you'd have to look at that over 100 years, figuring what the value of that might be. The generator set, I think everybody would commonly agree, is going to be important, particularly with the public police and fire use. Maybe one just dedicated to those 2 buildings. Expensive piece of equipment. The basement, I know that's a tough call, but I wouldn't throw it out the door yet, particularly if you could raise the grade. Groundwater might not be a problem, and there's valuable space that's there for 100 years also. Geotech, you've already hit on that, and you're moving ahead. If I'm not mistaken, the sewer pump station was placed out very close to Morgan Avenue, the one that's there now. Maybe you're aware of that. That was front close.
Yeah.
Couldn't think of a worse place for it to be. It would be relatively easy. Pick it up and move it to the back of the lot. It would be closer to pumping it up to the pump station, and you commonly could use that for both the fire and the police fairly easily. Underground utilities, interesting you come up. My thoughts on looking at Morgan Avenue, is any possibility, and it might be very expensive, maybe not, but would be, if you put everything underground, big bucks, yes?
I can answer that if you'd like. I'm not a spokesman for Mass Electric, but
No, I understand, but I'd be interested in your comment.
But Jim, just to clarify, are you talking from the pole to the building, or?
I'm talking about completely underground along Morgan Avenue.
Yeah.
There's at least 2 poles here, there may be 3.
Let me stop you right there. We're at 7.3, trying to get down to 6.5.
Let's go back from 7.3. Now, Jeff, you're 7.
But Jim, finish your thought.
Okay.
And it's duly noted, but we're looking to minimize costs, not to add to them. So just,
Okay, let's set that aside for right now. Jeff, the last thing, on your cost of 7.2, was that for a 10,300 square foot building? Now, if you knock 10.3 down to 9,000, which we're trying to get to, it's about a $600,000 bill. to
Yeah,
do
roughly
that.
$500,000.
So if we take that down, we're getting close to the 6.5.
That's right.
that's the goal.
That's my comments. I could stand here for a while longer, but
No, yeah.
time is of the essence.
Feel
Any
free
questions
to-
for me?
Feel free to email any information or questions that you have. We just present them at the next meeting
Sure.
as well, so that we don't miss anything. Fred?
Thank you.
Fred Davis, 59 Main Street. One thing I have to keep in mind is 6.5 million. To go over that, you have to go for an override, we're not gonna get it. And, you know, I think the chief knows exactly what he needs. I think you're very conservative. I like that. You know, I've looked at some of the architects' work online. I think he's perfect for this plan. Eric has been doing this for years. He knows what we need. You know, I don't know the gentleman over here, but we have a good team in place. You know, the only suggestion I've always been concerned is the Byfield Library. We made so many mistakes over there. The heating system is messed up. You know, everything is messed up over at the library. They've got like 25 electric heaters going around in there. And we need to get this right. I'm never focused on quantity, always focused on quality. We have to go from 9,000 to 8,500 square feet to get an excellent building. Maybe that's what we'll have to do. You know, I just want to make a suggestion to the board that our thoughts primarily have always, or my thoughts primarily have always been exterior. How does that place look? A lot of townspeople are never going to be inside of that. They're going to drive by it. They're going to see how it looks. You know, I like clapboards. I like asphalt shingles. You know, I would suggest to the architect that he realizes the town was built, established in 1635. Drive up and down the streets of Newbury, see what's there, get a good look at it. You know, we're only going to get one shot at this. You know, and we can't say, geez, we should have done this, we should have done that. You know, and we need to try to come in at 6 million and have the other 500,000 for local expenses and stuff like that. The moral of the story is, if you go back to the townspeople and say, we need another $1 million, you know what's going to happen. So I'm really pleased with this board. You know, I'm really pleased that we're all on the exact same page. We're all trying to build a high quality police station at the best cost we can do. But if you start adding 1 square foot over 9,000 square foot, that costs $400 every time you do that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Frank. Anybody else? Yep.
Tony Matthews, 111 Main Street. We're starting right off and we're trying to cut down the costs already. I'm just making a suggestion that you have a 1,000 square foot training room in the original plan here, and we have an underutilized 4,000 square foot room steps away from where this building is going. I think that the Fireman's Hall should be utilized as the training room, EOC, function hall, whatever, rather than adding it into a new building here. Another one.
No,
It's
good point.
redundant. We already have 4,000 square feet we're not using. Town owns it. No sense spending more money for a new one, I think.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else?
Yeah, Bob, do you want to comment on underground facilities?
Yeah, I think,
Board
you know what, I think it would be helpful to close on underground power.
All right, well, believe it, I'm not a spokesman for Mass Electric anymore, you know, it's National Grid.
Do you still get your employees discounts or?
No. Employees of the power company don't get discount. If you work for the phone company, you get a discount on your, well, you used to get a discount on your telephone. Mass Electric, no, because we're regulated. Back when I was doing estimates, on an urban setting, it was about $10,000 a foot to put overhead underground. Now, Morgan Avenue is not an urban setting, obviously, not a city setting, so it would be a lot less, maybe $5,000 a foot. So you don't want to get into that. There's two ways to pay for that. The town pays for it, or you can petition the town residents to increase their electric bill to pay for it. That's never gonna happen. So don't even think about putting underground on Morgan Avenue, way too much money. I think the optimum design would be to go with a siphon feed, single phase, from a pole to a single phase pad mount at the station. I believe that'll be the cheapest, because if you ran secondary from the pole into the new building, that's gonna be very expensive. Probably, I'm imagining it's gonna be a 400 amp, maybe a 600 amp service. Go with a single phase primary to a pad mount, it's gonna be a lot cheaper. I mean, that would still be the cost of the building, single phase primary and then secondary from the pad mount transformer into the building. And believe me, I think that'd be the cheapest, but we don't wanna put underground along Morgan Avenue. We don't have the money. The town doesn't have the money to do that.
We're driven by a budget,
Yeah.
and that, at the end of the day, that's where we have to land.
But again, I'm not a spokesman for.
No, but I appreciate your comment.
And wouldn't we be more economical to take the primary from, say, the poles on the butchery side, bring it onto the lot?
Yeah, you can do that, yeah, you could.
And minimize this.
Sure, back then, you'd get 2 poles free, I think you'd get 1 pole free, I don't know.
It's coming across the road,
Yeah.
and any paved areas is
Yeah.
very expensive
Right.
too. Get it in and then.
Yeah. So,
Okay, thank you.
again, I'm not a spokesman.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.